Why? I mean, perhaps people are bored, but come on.
I gotta think it's going to be that. It's got to be that people are bored.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. Well, get on board. Take up a hobby or something. Vlad, I know you probably use Zoom not just for work. Not just for work. I'm sure you've been using Zoom, right, Vlad?
Yeah, I'm using Zoom. We're using it right now, actually, to broadcast CBSN. We have, I can see you and I can see the director's wall and the markets and all the things that are happening that we're monitoring.
Yeah, so we use it for work. I've used it to stay connected with my family. In fact, the popularity of this video, conferencing app has skyrocketed because of COVID-19. But now experts are warning us that our parties, our work meetings, they are vulnerable to hackers.
Yeah, so I guess thousands of users have reported being victims of so-called Zoom bombing. So let's bring in CNET senior producer Dan Patterson to explain us through this. So again, this is, I guess, file this, Dan and Anne-Marie, under boredom at some level, although I'm sure, just like anything, there will be nefarious actors in all of this. But Dan, what is Zoom bombing, and explain who's doing it?
Yeah, so boredom plus a desire to troll equals stuff like Zoom bombing. So we've all heard of photo bombing. That's when you stand in the back of a stranger's photo and maybe give a thumbs up sign or something else, and it shows up unintentionally. It's intended to be kind of a good-natured prank. Zoom bombing is kind of that, but for video conferencing minus the good-natured part. So if you think about the URLs that we use for video conferencing, what you type into that address bar at the top of your browser, Zoom URLs, if the settings are not marked as private, are pretty guessable. In fact, many people have just typed in different numbers and codes and ended up in other people's meetings. It is often you can customize, so it customize a Zoom URL. So it is pretty common to find people who are aware of a custom URL. For example, mine might say /Dan Patterson, and just type that in to see if, someone who is a public persona has a Zoom meeting going on. And what has been happening over the last several weeks is that you have a larger group of people, sure, and bored people will do things, but we really have groups that are well coordinated, and it's not just trolling for the lulz or for fun, but use trolling as a mechanism of harassment to do kind of pretty bad things. In this case, many Zoom bombs have been racist. In fact, one NHL player who was a prospect for the New York Rangers was doing a fan chat, and he was inundated with thousands of racist slurs. Now, we can tie some of these things to message boards and forums where there is coordination going on, and we look at the dark web as we always do. It's almost boring now to look at the dark web, but sure enough, we find Zoom URLs there. Another challenge with Zoom is that they have interacted with companies like Facebook. In fact, we reported here at CBS News that that Facebook had purchased some private information, or at least was working to acquire private information from Zoom. And we know that our information, once it's on social networks, almost never stays private. So that information, which can include those Zoom URLs, is often hackable or searchable or findable.
So once this news broke about the possibility of hacking, a lot of organizations started to try to determine whether or not they should continue using Zoom. I know it was an issue for the school board in New York, which is major. A lot of school systems depend on Zoom for virtual classroom learning and that sort of thing. But then Google announced that it was banning its employees from using the app. Do we know what led to that decision?
Well, a few things. So I spoke with Google, and they declined to talk on record, but we do have a number of meetings with Google scheduled, and we always use Google Hangouts. Now, the reason for Google potentially banning Zoom is less nefarious than it might sound. It's because Google owns Hangouts, which is a competitive property. But on background and off the record, people at Google told us that they had many of the same security concerns that the public might have. And that is, look, we're in this constant balance between convenience on the one hand, and Zoom is really convenient, and security on the other hand. And people at Google said, look, we just need to opt for security. And, Zoom has a lot of great features built in, but we, like everyone else, can't have private meetings harassed or leaked to the public.
So interesting. So we also know that Zoom, Dan, has been doing business with other online sites. What can you tell us about their interactions with Facebook and Dropbox?
So, like I said a moment ago, Zoom has been doing business with Facebook, and some of that business, as we reported here on CBS, included the exchange of user data. Another company, Dropbox, which is cloud storage. You might know Dropbox as a place to upload your photos or back up your computer. They also work with private companies to do enterprise level backups. So Dropbox had hired Zoom, but also employed hackers to search for security vulnerabilities inside the product. Now, it's pretty common for companies to hire white hat hackers, these are ethical hackers, to find vulnerabilities, flaws, and holes. It is really unusual to hear about one business partner hiring hackers to find vulnerabilities in the product that they're also doing business with, or at least it's very uncommon for this to be public knowledge. So it kind of shows, it underlies the scale of the challenges that Zoom faces right now. They have privacy problems in the way that they manage their private user data, working with companies like Facebook. They have security problems, 0 days and other cyber flaws inside the product, and then they have just basic vulnerabilities that any person who doesn't have security or technical knowledge can still use to hack or guess URLs and harass people. So it's a three-pronged problem. It will probably take Zoom quite a bit of time to solve all of these issues.
So despite learning about this hacking problem, I find that no one has really slowed down in the use of Zoom. We just incorporated it so quickly into our way of continuing business that I think it's really hard to skip to something else. Zoom's stocks, though, have sort of really taken a pounding. They were basically one of the few stocks that continued to rise during this crazy time, and then they started to sort of plummet. What is Zoom saying about this? What are they doing?
Well, they have reacted in a way that is almost reminiscent of Silicon Valley, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, which is, hey, look, we will fix all of these problems. None of these are really systemic issues. You don't have to worry about anything, and trust us. We'll solve these problems. This is a pretty standard reply from Silicon Valley firms. And in this age, not just the age of coronavirus, but let's say the post-Cambridge Analytica era of tech firms, consumers demand a lot more. And right now, the stakes are incredibly high for everyone because these types of communication software aren't just for fun. They've become critical infrastructure. We rely on these to do sensitive business and personal interoperation. So when Zoom kind of brushes off some of these concerns or doesn't appear to take them seriously, we see that echoed in the marketplace.
Really, really interesting. As always, Dan Patterson, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Great to see you.